live. Okay.
Whee. Give it 1 second. All right, here we go. This is Three Fellas Talking Football. Welcome. It is, unsurprisingly, a one-game showdown slate. Dave Loughran, Andrew Barron, Ben Rasa. We got actually a lot to talk about. I will say, fellas, and whichever one of you wants to jump in, this is actually you have good games, bad games. I don't really think it even matters anymore for showdown because it could be it could be Giants, San Francisco with Eli Manning and Nick Mullins, or it could be Rams, Packers, and everyone's going to play the same. Everyone's going to get in the same. It's not going to affect any decisions because the prize pools are identical.
Yeah, we're all playing Showdown.
Yep.
This is a good one, though.
Yeah, this is fun. Better than Monday. Oof.
Yeah, it really doesn't make a difference. What's up, Will Griffey? Good to have all you guys with us. We'll wait till people start getting in. Actually, no, we'll just jump right into it because the live before lock is happening for basketball. And hopefully, some of them will jump over here as well. So we'll let them get in before we start getting into the analysis. But Ben, we got like half a foot of snow today. I know you did too.
Oh, I got
miserable
snow.
Day.
I was out in the elements. I didn't want to be, but these people don't. Somehow, I've lived in New York for a long time. They just don't prepare for this. We did not have plows out, and it turned into a parking lot. Had to rescue the girlfriend from the roads, as if I can do anything.
You're out of your element in the elements, man.
It's not good. So I'm very tilted, and we haven't even started the showdown slate, which it could be a bad one unless I get this game right. So there's always a chance it turns around with these monster prize pools.
Yes, there's a very small chance. I agree.
Real small, but
let's dive into it. We got the Seahawks and we got the Packers. Seahawks at home. Under Pete Carroll, they're 7-1, I believe it is, in primetime games. Maybe it was on Thursday night games. That's possible too. Probably Thursday games. But they're 7-1. Andrew, they're 3-point favorites here. We've got a 49 point total, a pretty close spread. And I think this game gets a little bit more interesting now because Green Bay actually has a running game now. And so does Seattle, except, oh God, last week the Rashad Penny stuff drove me nuts because I'm like, all right, nice. I pegged the Mike Davis stuff. I got it perfectly. It was, and I think Mike Davis had that garbage time touchdown. He didn't have a bad game. He had 18 fantasy points. But to think of what he could have done had Rashad Penny, who in the game before that had 4 carries, 0 snaps before that. He's had 2 games in the last 5 without any offensive snaps. But of course, he has a 100-yard game and a touchdown. So now Chris Carson's back. They literally have, I won't call it a 3-headed monster, but a 3-man backfield where Chris Carson's the starter, but who knows what's going to happen. So we got 2 run games that are actually working right now for 2 teams that have struggled to get anything generated in the run over the past few years.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Not teams you would think of as running. Like in a vacuum, I'm super excited about this game because it's like, in the non-Tom Brady division, but we've got like my favorite real-life quarterback and my favorite fantasy quarterback, facing each other. But I don't know. Neither of them. They've both been pretty good this year. And almost too efficient. They haven't. Neither have been throwing a whole ton or put up the monster games that you might like to see. It would be fun if this shoots out, but clearly both teams are going to try to run the ball, and both teams have had pretty good success doing so lately. So, a lot of different ways this could unfold. I'm excited to get into it.
What about you, Ben? 2 run games that are functional. Aaron Rodgers. I think it's reasonable to say that Rodgers hasn't looked himself lately. Like he's still been solid, but it was Aaron Jones and the defense that got it done last game against Miami. Against New England, Aaron Rodgers did not look himself. A couple passing touchdowns, but still didn't totally look himself. He's still been good this year, but I don't know if he's been Aaron Rodgers. And then on the other side, Russell Wilson is finally beginning to run a bit. He's got 133 rushing yards over his last 2 games. Prior to that, he had less than that total on the season. I think he had like 80 rushing yards. Or you get what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A lot of factors in this game that could, like, will Russell Wilson run? Will his passing volume stay at under 25 passes a game, which we've seen, 26 or less in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his last 7. There's so many moving parts on just this one game slate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the running game, obviously, I'm sure for both teams, they want the balance, and if it's effective, it's going to drive down the numbers. It may raise the efficiency of guys like Rodgers and Wilson, but that's not, super appealing for fantasy.
Right.
It was some hope to see. I mean, Cam and Russell Wilson were the guys that, it used to be, they have that huge rushing upside. This year, it hasn't been Russell Wilson at all. We've seen it lately, but that was one of the things that kind of tapered my expectations with him as the year went on. This is an elimination game in my eyes. Just when you look at the actual pitcher, they both desperately agree. Game. So it's not like they're not going to pull out all the stops. Rodgers, who knows if it's the knee? That was a long time ago. Obviously, that was opening game. That has certainly had an effect, but I think that Seattle's running game is what I could bank on a little more. Whereas if the Packers fall behind, they're on the road. They may not abandon Aaron Jones, but I could see it. Rodgers taking, if someone throws 40 times in this game, I would bank that it's him, not Wilson.
Totally agree. Will Griffey says, I wonder if this will be one of those slow-paced, grinded-out games where both teams seem both teams seemingly hell-bent on running the ball. Andrew, generally speaking, you'd never expect that to be the case with Green Bay. But and I don't think it'll be grinded out, hell-bent on running it, but I do think you could see a lot of rushing opportunities in this game for both teams. I have some lineups with Carson and Jones, or I really don't want to play Penny, but I am targeting both running backs in this game from both sides.
Yeah, I think so too, and not just Chris Carson. I think that's the big question of the night is what's going on with the Seattle roulette.
Totally.
Chris Carson, in theory, they've said that he's got his starting job back. I'm sure he'll get the first crack at it. I think Mike Davis will run too. And the big thing is Mike Davis has gotten a lot of passing work. So I'm excited about that. I actually think I prefer Davis overall. It's hard to predict ownership on a Showdown, but I sort of think that Carson will be more popular because, he is the nominal starter at least. And I just think Chris Carson can pretty easily have the 13 carries for 42 yards and nothing else kind of game.
Yeah.
And I think Mike Davis has a real chance to do something. This is actually a feature for those of you that are subscribers to Awesemo.com with the Cruncher add-on. This is a case for me, like when I was building my lineups. For a lot of it, I had like a group and just put the 3 Seattle running backs in there and said, do not use more than one of these guys in a single lineup, because I don't think they're particularly correlated together, but one of them is likely going to have a pretty good game just with the amount Seattle likes to run the ball. And I do like their chances to be able to run the ball, and a little bit more than Green Bay's. They're at home. Their defense is certainly not what it used to be. KJ Wright isn't active tonight, but it's a proud franchise. I hate to go on those, but they've played pretty not terrible, and they've been certainly competitive at home. I don't think Green Bay is any great shakes either. So I like Seattle to win this game, which would lead me to like their running backs a little bit more, and they're quite a bit cheaper than Aaron Jones as well. So
yeah, at home at night on a short week, it's a pretty good spot just for any team, never mind who the teams are. So that's definitely a boost to Seattle, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and look, Seattle has the second most rushing attempts in the league this year, Ben. It's not just they run the football a bit. No, they are running the football at a higher clip than 30 other teams. The Rams are the only team running the ball at a higher clip than Seattle. So it's just, as Andrew mentioned, the roulette is tough to figure here. It's tough to kind of crack the code, but one of these guys is going to put up, you would think, at least a volume to give you decent numbers. Mike Davis has the passing upside, but Chris Davis is going to get the first crack at it on the ground, or Chris Carson.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me and for most people, Penny's the third guy. The other two are kind of neck and neck. I have more Davis as well. I agree. Andrew pointed out the receiving upside is just something that Carson, even if he has an effective game, I don't know how much that's going to play a role. He's more likely.
He needs to score.
He really does. That's the thing. He needs. If he has a big game, he's going to have 20 touches on the ground and he's going to find the end zone. Whereas Mike Davis could have a decent game with a handful of touches if he has 5 targets and turns that into 40 yards. That can really bolster it. Penny's the wild card. If someone gets completely phased out of the game, you would assume it's him, just because if Carson's running pretty effectively, they may not have that much room for him. And then, if you want to take it outside the running backs, obviously Lockett has been, the guy for Russell Wilson this year. Baldwin's been disappointing. I have obviously it's a 1-game slate. You can go to Baldwin, but I still think that Lockett is the guy that I wanted to target in the Seattle passing game.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start with Seattle then. We kind of already broke down the run game here, like where we see it going, Andrew. And the honest answer is nobody really knows.
Right.
If Green Bay takes an early lead, Mike Davis will likely be the guy. I don't see this being a game where Green Bay really jumps out to a quick lead. And offensively, they haven't had as much firepower as you'd expect to see from this Packers offense. So it's tough to gauge. But in the passing game, you've got guys like Tyler Lockett, who Ben likes quite a bit tonight. I know he's going to have a bunch in the captain spot. Tyler Lockett, can we agree, is totally touchdown dependent as well, though?
Yeah. I think that's fair. But I will say this. He's, to me, taking a step from being like in the Travis Benjamin bucket where it's like he's going to get 2 targets and he needs an 80-yard touchdown. He's getting more looks than he's accustomed to. So he's raised his floor a little bit, but ultimately, yes, he needs to find the end zone.
I mean, he's scored in 7 of 9 games, so that's pretty good. In terms of sustainability, I'm not so sure, but guys do this. Dwayne Bowe did it, and then you never heard from him again. So it's not to say you can't keep scoring. Andrew, let's talk about this passing game and Russell Wilson as well. Are you using him? Who do you like more if you're playing these quarterbacks? Are you pairing them together? Let's get into all of that.
Yeah, I have some Russ. I think, and just one last thing on the running game, I think it makes some sense. Mike Davis is a better correlation with Aaron Jones, I guess. I don't see, it's possible, but where they're just running down the field on each other over and over again, where it's Carson versus Jones, I don't see as likely. So if Green Bay can come out and score early and it's a better script for Aaron Jones, that does play more towards Mike Davis's skill set. So, again, when you're telling your story. But as far as the passing game goes, I think I do like Russell Wilson. It's been disappointing this year. His volume has not been there. They're trying to run the ball. And, yeah, his running's been down a little bit, up again a little bit lately. Historically, Russ has actually been kind of trash against the Packers, specifically, like playing far lower, than his normal. I think they played 6 times or something, and he's 8 TDs and 10 picks, which
unless he has backup scab refs, right?
That's right. That was a Monday night game.
That was Seattle and the Packers. Yeah.
Yeah, Golden State. That is one of the most indelible images of all time in the NFL of the 2 refs like calling the opposite thing right next to each other.
So dumb.
It was great.
Oh, that was brutal. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. I do think part of why Wilson may have struggled a little bit, specifically against the Packers, they used to run a really, I don't know the specifics of it, but they ran a pretty unique defense. Like other teams were not. They were much more, not bend, don't break, but they were focused on getting turnovers. That was like a big part of their sort of mission statement, the Dom Capers defense. And so they gave up a ton of big plays. Mike Pettin is the new defensive coordinator this year. He preaches nothing but, keep it simple, make it so that like the players don't get overly confused. We're not, we've got some wacky plays, but we're not going nuts like Capers did, where I think it was a lot of just like blitzing people from who the hell knows where, sort of like what the Steelers are doing now, where it's just like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and I think it probably confused Russ a little bit. I think that's probably a good thing for the Packers overall, maybe to be doing a little bit more of a conservative thing so their young guys don't get exposed as much. They have a lot of young guys in the secondary that are probably prone to making mistakes. But it might be good for Russ Wilson, too, just to get a bit of a change of pace. He's a very good quarterback at sort of picking things apart when he has some time and when he knows what's coming. So, yeah, I'm pretty down. And I'm with Ben. I think Lockett's the premier passing weapon. I do like Baldwin. I'm still biting there a little bit just because I think the troll game's coming. That's been the other sort of frustrating thing with Seattle is that for the last few years, it's been pretty, it's not a ton of receiving options. You're not really hamstring yourself trying to take dart throws all over the place. But there's like 4 dudes now. Nick Van Ette's really cheap. He's going to see some work. I have a fair amount of him. And then David Moore is also only $4,000, and he's kind of Mr. Air Yards darling lately. He's getting a lot of the air yards through the air. So, hopefully some of those convert a little bit. And I have a fair amount of him just for the savings. It's really nice.
For sure. By the way, if you are playing NBA tonight, I just want to throw this out there just because, you don't have a lot of time. Warriors are starting Andre Iguodala at point guard. And I've mentioned this a lot. That's what Steve Kerr does a lot. Surprisingly, yes, it's him over Cook. So just getting that out there. If you got like 4 minutes to put your lineups in. So keep that in mind.
Gerald Green's playing too.
Correct. So let's by the way, and someone, I don't know who was mentioned this in chat. They got there before I could mention it. Doug Baldwin last week he said that this week about last week that he finally felt pain-free in his knee, Ben. I mean, look, you take that for what it is, and we don't really know, but it is slightly encouraging to know that he's finally not in pain because there's no question early in the season that was influencing his play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's just, the NFL, it's not that many games. Like, you get a couple where you're banged up, you have a couple fluky ones, and all of a sudden your season is derailed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that much. And I have a lot of Baldwin. It's not that when I went to the captain, I have more Lockett there, but I have a lot of Baldwin. I know David Moore is a thing, and you can go there. Jerron Brown's, he's getting phased out pretty quickly. He's going to be only on the field, I'd say, for a handful of snaps, but you never know. He could catch one. I didn't splash too much there. I really stuck to when I used Russ. I paired him with his 2 big options and went from there because, the Packers are more where I went to attack maybe the secondary options besides Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I'm not sure Wilson was super pleased with Moore dropping that touchdown 2 weeks back. I know it was like semi-deflected, but still, not a great look. But I mean, I still think, Andrew, that and you're right. Russ has had some issues with Green Bay, and you broke down nicely probably why it's been the case in the past. It's just this is one of those teams that you kind of hate guessing with. Whether it's Nick Van Ette or Lockett or Moore. Or it's Baldwin, or it's Carson or Davis or even Rashad Penny. There's so many different ways. Or it could be Wilson doing it with his legs, and he ends up like rushing 2 touchdowns in, and all of the pass catchers give you nothing. Right? That is still a possibility. He still rushed for 91 yards last week. So there's so many different ways this offense can work. With the Packers side of the ball, not really. Like, yeah, Aaron Jones had a big game. Rodgers wants to get him more involved for sure, and I think he can have another good game tonight. But Rodgers, if Rodgers has a good game, for sure that like Adams or Valdez-Scantling, one of those guys is going to have a great game with him. Wilson could have a big game where he spreads everything around or he does it with his legs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the other problem with Russ, and this has been the real problem this year, is if he only throws the ball 24 times, you don't have many outs.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not like, Blake Bortles dropping back 60 times. It's like, well, maybe he'll hit D.D. Westbrook a couple eventually.
Great point.
Which is a miracle in itself. But
it's a great point, though. There's no if the volume isn't there, then you just give yourself even less opportunity to hit on whichever guy you were banking on producing, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm on the same page with this guy in the chat. Our takes are. I feel what this guy's saying when we get to the Packers side of the ball. Listen, MVS 4.37. He's 6'4". Not the greatest leaper in the world, but I mean, anyone who knows me much, like I'm a combine sucker. So
no, he watches from A to B. I respect that.
Yeah. No
you got 3 letters into it.
That's good stuff.
Oh, he said this guy.
ESB.
I mentioned that last. Oh shit. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. That was too much.
That's good stuff.
That's okay. Yeah, just you catching yourself was gold.
Yeah, I was like, can I? You know, I feel like it's like Voldemort. You just say the name. You know, and maybe not.
Yeah, nah, you made the right move. Just cutting that one short.
All right. Well, he also likes, Equinemius St. Brown, noted mixed martial arts fighter. I like the idea of him
my
too.
My face hurts.
What about
we have a good time on Three Fellas. You know, I like this showdown thing because we do get a little more time to like riff with one another, which we're all friends in real life, or at least on the internet in real life. So we have a good time talking to one another.
Oh, absolutely. Ben, what are you doing though with? What are you doing with Rodgers?
Honestly, nothing special. Where I have the salary, I'm playing him. Didn't look to jam him in. I went more to the weapons. Devontae Adams is my other big captain. I have him a lot of spots. And then this is, if it's not Jordan Reed, the other guy that I just can't quit is Jimmy Graham. And I'm going back again. And what is there to say? You know, obviously another guy, he needs to find the end zone. The targets are, every time I think they're going to start building, they're just not sustained. He was not involved last week. I do think that was more because he didn't need to be involved. And this is a game where I don't think that the Packers really have a realistic chance to control this game like they did last week on the road. I just don't see that. So I'm going back to him. I'm hoping ownership, it's Showdown, but off that game, I don't think Jimmy Graham will be as popular as he would have if you rearranged his game log a little bit.
Right.
Cover 3 defense too. The middle of the field in theory is a little, you know, we've always seen that with Atlanta. We see it with Jacksonville a little bit. Like the slot in the middle of the field and the running backs out of the backfield, like those are a little easier passes to complete against these Ds.
Yeah, I mean, I think this does set up well for Jimmy Graham. It's just time and time again this year he has not. And again, I was saying before, it's a short set. Jimmy Graham had a couple passes this year where he was tackled on the 1-inch line, and that honestly would change a lot of just how his season's been looked at.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really buy into the revenge game thing. I mean, like it's not much of a revenge game. He plays for a good team. He's got a good quarterback, and it's not like he was used all that heavily in Seattle. So, I mean, I don't see this as like a big deal. You know, I don't see. Oh man. Plus, for a revenge game, the quarterback has to oblige.
Yeah,
like he's not just going. Right. Targets aren't just going to show up out of thin air. But yeah, I think looking at Aaron Jones, I keep coming back. You know what? No, we'll stay with the passing game for a second because we like to kind of go in order here. Devontae Adams, Andrew, is really one of the most reliable pass catchers in the league. Like each week, if you play Devontae Adams, you're pretty sure that even if Rodgers has just a decent game, that Adams is probably going to still have a good game, right? He has, 16 plus DK points in every game this season. He's scored 9 times in 9 games. Last week, Rodgers was, okay. It was mostly Aaron Jones. And Devontae Adams still finds the end zone twice on 4 receptions. I mean, this guy has really been as solid as you can possibly come for a receiver. And he just has a nose for the end zone, and Rodgers loves him there. I'm going to have quite a bit of Devontae Adams, even in non-Rodgers lineups, because he just gets it done every week, man.
Which is amazing, because remember his coming out party when, I think it was when Jordy tore his ACL in the preseason, and it was like, oh, Devontae Adams, that was like the height of DFS. Was that like the 2015 season when it was still?
No, the 2015 season was where everyone was super hyped about him, and
right,
it was a huge bust. He was a bust.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. This is like
because Jordy got hurt last year too at some point, but you're right. You're right.
I thought it was Jordy, but whatever. Yeah. And Devontae
No, you're right,
Adams,
you're right.
the pricing came out super early. Devontae Adams is $3K. Like I remember, I had him. I was still into more into season long stuff. I had him in my big keeper league. It was like, oh man, this is so great. I'm keeping him. And just like, yeah, he was an absolute disaster. And that whole year, and despite having like a fair amount of chances, and he has really, really improved as a player. Man, he's good.
He really is.
Yeah.
Last week I got scared off a little by Howard on the Dolphins, and this guy he just does his thing. Rodgers obviously loves him. The targets are there. No reason to not go to him tonight.
Yeah, like against Xavier Rhodes, he had 8 for 64 and a touchdown. Like you put him up really against anyone, and he's probably going to have a good game. And Rodgers is, what I like. No cornerback is going to force Rodgers to look off Devontae, like to turn away from Devontae Adams. That's what I love about it. He's never going to not target him.
Yeah.
No.
So
he lets the guy make plays. It's sort of like with Ben and Antonio Brown or something, where it's like I'm willing to let this guy just try to beat the other dude, even if he's covered right now.
100%. What do you make of the rest of these pass catchers? Coming into the season, Equanimous St. Brown was the guy that I thought would potentially take over if there was an injury. It has clearly been Valdez-Scantling, and he's deservedly so. He's been awesome. Guy's been really productive, and Rodgers seems to have some trust in him. But we have no Randall Cobb again. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, and we have no Geronimo Allison, who's on the IR. So what about these secondary guys, not including Jimmy Graham?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much ESB from there. I don't think Jamon Moore is going to get enough work to really be thought of. I don't mind if you're like seriously MMEing this, if you're playing like 100 lineups, I don't mind 3 or 4 Lance Kendricks. Like that guy does get touchdowns sometimes. You'd not be surprised. Certainly, if you're playing like 10 or 15 or even 20 lineups, I'm probably not going there. But he's something to add to the portfolio if you get bigger and bigger, because I certainly wouldn't be. It's not out of the question that Lance Kendricks, catches 3 passes for 22 yards and a touchdown. But that's enough to win these things sometimes, and he will be low owned. So,
that would piss me off. That would really piss me off.
No. Not good at all.
But it's very possible, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game. And I guess this, when we have better teams, I feel like there's not that many people where you can always reach, because if you're on the field in Showdown, you're somewhat in play. But there's not that many guys where it's like, okay, this guy could really shake up Showdown, and he's $600.
Right.
I don't see that really this week. Like, yeah, St. Brown, he's somewhat low owned, but he'll be involved. That next tier with the backup tight ends and Brown, Jaron Brown, there's not much there. I mean, you can play those guys, but you're literally banking on the handful of snaps that they're going to see, that they get a target, and that target turns into something. It's a super thin margin.
It's very, very, very thin, which is why I want to turn to the super punts. Remember what was it? Was it last Thursday? Yeah, I guess it was the Pittsburgh-Carolina game. What a beating that was, huh?
Oh, yeah.
We haven't talked about that.
We don't need to. I was very high.
I think I came closest to the pin by saying Pittsburgh in a shootout, but I had them by 7 points. It was a little more than that.
Yeah, we both had Pittsburgh in a shootout. We both had Pittsburgh with a 60-plus total, except it was a 60-plus total. Actually,
I think I went like 73 or something stupid, but it was a daunting.
You definitely met. Well, the thing is, it wasn't a shootout though.
Right.
No, it
wasn't a shootout.
It started as a shootout. Ben, what was your favorite part of last week's game?
It was when they went right up and down the field with McCaffrey, and I was just like, this team is the team. And then next time I blinked, Cam was throwing pick 6 from the end zone. One of the worst passes I've seen of the year, but
yeah, that wasn't a shootout. That was an execution.
It was. And
that was bad.
The worst part about it was, you would think by random chance, if nothing else, that James Washington could have contributed in any way, but of all the Steelers, he just did not get involved. And that was the one guy I really paid down for in that spot. That was tilting. Not good.
Well, I told you guys I was taking a stand. I wasn't going to play McCaffrey. I thought Carolina could have a tough time moving the ball. They do, except McCaffrey has all of their offensive production.
Yeah, that was. But like even in that game, there were guys that I thought that were somewhat cheap that you knew were going to be on the field. I don't see that in this game really, and I guess you could look to you mentioned Vanette, but he's just so likely for a bagel. Like he really is. I know.
He's playing a lot though.
He is. No, yeah, that's the thing. The snaps are there, but man, is he for the own? And he's going to be popular. He's going to be, I would say, the most popular like true punt.
Yeah, because I think what we're getting at is him and ESB are kind of the only truly viable like cheap guys
that
are going to see more than 10, 15 snaps. Yeah, I
all
agree.
right, so let's take a look. Let's take a look in the dumpster real quick. We're going to go below. Generally, the real punts are like below the kickers, right? Like below that 3K range.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about Vanette at, 1,800 though for a guy that actually can have decent games is not crazy, right? But for instance, kind of like what Ben said on last week's show, you will have a lot of games where the tight end could score early in the game and you feel great because he was 1,800. And then that's his only reception on the game, and it ends up being nowhere close to a winning lineup with a minute. You know what I mean, Ben? Like Vanette had one catch for 2 yards and a touchdown last week.
Last week was the perfect example. He scored early in that game, and then he got kind of phased out, and he turned out to not even be returning anything. It's just tough and I'm not saying he sees one target, obviously.
Sure.
But man, if he's the viable super cheap punt, people are jamming Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, one and the captain. You kind of have to take someone down there. I would much rather roll the dice with someone like St. Brown, who, there's a lot of different scenarios where he gets actually involved in this game.
Who do you have in the captain spot most right now, Ben?
It's probably Davante Adams.
And you, Andrew?
Davante Adams.
Okay, I guess we're all mostly on Adams.
Him and Lockett. I didn't overload it, but those two, they're the guys I feel just the best about in general.
I think that's a weird correlation with Chris Carson for what it's worth. Because I think if Seattle is able to just go out there and run the ball like they would like to, and it's with Chris Carson, that means Vanette's blocking a lot, I think. So.
Okay.
For what it's
so worth. So you think Vanette's more viable in like a Mike Davis lineup? Or just in a
or like he's kind of independent of those dudes. I just think if the script goes, because this is kind of what happened with the Rams, is they hung in there and they were able to move the ball the way they wanted to, which was running it. And and Vanette, like you guys said, like just totally faded after that early score. And I think that's probably because he was staying into block and it was working.
Right. No, it makes sense.
I'll just say this: if I wanted to be aggressive, I would rather play Ed Dixon and just take.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I think they're relatively the same. I know he's playing less snaps, but I feel like he's more of a threat in the receiving game, and you're going to get a fraction of the ownership. I think Vanette's going to be pretty popular for a sub 2K guy.
All right, so check this out. Let's say Davante Adams is the guy you have most in the captain. Well, not let's say, that is the case, right?
That is the case.
Unless it's Ed Dixon.
Unless it's sharp.
So how much Rodgers then?
How much Rodgers do I have?
Yeah, or is it like I said, Adams can have a great game and Rodgers can just be mediocre? Because that's very, very possible. But I'm curious, how much Rodgers are you pairing with Adams with Rodgers just in the flex?
I have a good amount of Rodgers. I have like 40%, but it's not all with Davante Adams. I think of course they're correlated, but like you said, Adams is going to get his, and it's very possible that he's just the guy that predominantly gets the targets and the rest of the passing game is ineffective. Where I obviously have Rodgers is where I have ESB, Jimmy Graham, Davante Adams captain, and I have an overload. Because if those three are all getting in the end zone, say, obviously Rodgers is part of that optimal.
And that's when you want Rodgers captain a lot of the times, because he's likely to, if he's really spreading it around. Granted, Davante Adams is somewhat unique in that he could score, 2 touchdowns on 110 yards and still, and Rodgers could get all those other guys fed too without him being the highest scoring. But it's pretty rare that if you've got like 3 receiving options that you all think are going to smash, that the quarterback isn't like the biggest smash of all of that. So you want to play him in captain. Game theory aside, just pure optimally.
And here's another thought: if Devontae Adams is in your captain spot and you don't really have the room or for Rodgers, or you don't love Rodgers in the lineup, think about, and I'm not a big advocate on the kickers, but think about getting some Mason Crosby in there too, because this if it is a game where Adams has big numbers, let's say he scores once, but that's Rodgers' only passing touchdown, which is possible. You could see an instance where Adams still has a great game and so does Crosby, where Rodgers, because if Adams has a great game and Rodgers doesn't, there's a good chance that the Packers are still going to put points on the board. They're still going to move the football, even if they're not pushing it into the end zone, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the only, just to expand, kind of bring those points together, the only way for your quarterback to not be the optimal in a situation like that is if they're throwing really short throws that really add up. So if Devontae Adams has 15 targets and he catches 13 of them, but he doesn't find the end zone and he has 13 for 120, it's possible that they stalled in the red zone multiple times and someone like Crosby picked up all those points and Devontae Adams was responsible for moving them up the field. The only guy that would really hurt would be Rodgers, not the receiver, and obviously it would help Crosby.
QBs actually need touchdowns more than any other position too.
Exactly.
Yes. Yep. And that's kind of what I'm saying. But even so, Adams could score one touchdown and Rodgers still isn't optimal if that's his only touchdown. Yep. You know what I mean?
Especially if it's a slugfest, and it's not a crazy high scoring game and they're both able to run the ball, then all of a sudden Devontae Adams getting 7 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown is that might be the highest score of the game.
Right.
I'm much more cognizant of using Rodgers with the other Green Bay receivers. Like when I jammed those guys in, I made it a point to get Rodgers. With Adams, I just let the lineups fall because he's so good that he can get there regardless.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are your guys' thoughts on running naked Wilson?
I don't hate that.
No, he's, historically, he's been sort of the second most viable QB after Cam for the last 5 years or so that you can do that with. Hasn't been the case as much this year. I did read somewhere, I forget, it was on, I feel like I should know who this, but whatever. I think I read somewhere that Russ is not running in the red zone still. It's not like that Cam Newton stuff. Like he's actually like the goal line back sometimes. Like they'll literally call a running play for him at the 5-yard line. They don't do that ever with Russ Wilson. So
he's much more of a pure scrambler where Cam Newton is taking, it's almost like a wildcat where he's just taking the snap and he's running with it. And then there's Trubisky, who just runs 70 yards for a touchdown for no reason. That guy runs. Not to get.
He does the Tyreek Hill in open space thing where
that's what I'm saying.
Running backwards and trying to get around people. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Like Mike Davis is another one of those guys where you could roster, and you could not play him, even though he's the pass catching guy. You could play him, not have a quarterback, not play Wilson. Because as you pointed out, Ben, it's not unrealistic that depending on how this game goes, that Mike Davis picks up 6 receptions on short yardage dump offs. That I could see this game. I know it has a 49 total, which is relatively high. I don't know. It feels like this game. It feels like this game could turn into a defensive slugfest to some extent.
Yeah, I mean. This is a big game. I know that doesn't rule out a shootout, but my God, you would really think this is just a pretty generic football game from a scoring standpoint. I expect this winning score to be 28-24-ish, something like that. I would be absolutely stunned if this is out of control scoring. But
Andrew, Anton Murphy in our chat is seemingly infatuated with Equanimous St. Brown. And he says he's seen. Wait, actually, that's not. I don't think. What did he say? He's seen. Where is it? At least 4 targets in 3 straight weeks. I don't know. I think we're looking at different St. Browns. We have to be because that's not accurate. But your favorite punt on this slate is who?
I think it's him. Yeah. I have a lot of Van though. It's gross, but.
Do you?
Yeah, he just fit in a lot of lineups. kind of changing it around as we speak. I got 3 minutes of noodling left to do. So
the reason I'd prefer St. Brown is just because, say he does, get off to, has a couple, receptions early on. Rodgers will we've seen him do it with Valdez Scantling, where the guy makes a couple big receptions for him, and then he keeps looking his way. So
even slow ass Geronimo Allison, he's like keeps when the guy does well.
He'll keep, and I'm with you. I mean, this is somewhat biased. Like I saw him a lot in college. I thought that he would be the guy to really benefit from all this, and I didn't know anything about this MVS dude, and he looks great. But Equanimeous St. Brown's, it's not for lack of talent. I think he could definitely be a contributor, and Rodgers will give guys chances. He's that type of quarterback where we've seen it even with MVS. Like he gives him chances and he's making plays. That really helps receivers who, for a lot of other quarterbacks, if they're not getting separation, they just don't get targets. That's not the case with a guy like Rodgers.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not, and it makes things a whole lot different. So I think I'm with you guys. St. Brown seems to be the guy that I'm punting with. Before we head out, let's go ahead and do it. Ben, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself from last week.
Woo.
Give me who winning lineup has who in the captain spot. We'll start with this first.
Winning lineup has Tyler Lockett in the captain spot.
Oh, all right. Andrew, follow that up.
I guess it's my turn to be the chalk donkey this week. Juju was my pick last week, and I felt so good after that 75-yard touchdown to start, and then he was kind of crickets afterwards too. I will say Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, yeah, I was going to go Adams. I'll go, screw it. You know what? I'm going to say Aaron Jones has another big game, and he's been targeted in the passing game a lot. But for me, it's Aaron Jones is still my preferred guy. Final score of this game, Ben?
31-21 Seahawks.
31-21 Seahawks. Andrew?
That sounds about right. I'll say 28-20 Seahawks.
28-20. Give me... Whew. All right. I think Rodgers pulls this off.
I hope you're right so badly.
I think Rodgers pulls this off, and they win 24-21. It comes down to the final play of the game. Mason Crosby breaks the tie. I'll even go a little further with it.
So that's
how about that?
That's your real captain, it's Mason Crosby.
He's the hero. He's the hero. He ain't the captain, but he's the hero.
57-yarder for 28 points or whatever that counts as.
Right.
It's on a field goal. He runs it in.
If they score 24 points, that would mean probably only one field goal, though, which would kind of suck.
Potentially.
Well, until the 72-yarder he kicks to end it, it just gets you double bonus.
My kicker, that would be possible.
Yeah, exactly. For the first round guy. Oh man.
Yep. There it is. All right, this has been fun. Been three fellas talking football. We'll see you back here next week. Who's next week? Sure, nobody knows.
I don't know. I'll know tomorrow, but I have no idea right now.
Next
week's Thanksgiving.
Oh,
everybody.
So we won't be here next week, but there will be plenty of content for the Thursday slate. It'll be interesting.
We'll have articles. We got all kinds of stuff. Yeah, check us out.
We'll be getting after Theo Riddick and the gang.
And it'll be interesting to see if they do. I'm expecting a big 3-game contest like they always do. And then I have a feeling they're going to do the showdown slate for the 8 p.m. game.
I bet they do it for all three.
That's what Josh thinks. Can they what?
If they can't churn your money, though, I don't know how they could do that, because there's a lot of people who don't have any money.
Right. It's very possible. It's a good question. That's why I was expecting it to just do one for the late game.
Exactly. That's probably a good call.
Because by the late game, there's going to be a lot of people that know whether they won or lost, or at least not won or lost, but whether they got crushed. Like, you know what I mean?
How much they lost is what you're saying.
They'll definitely have it for the second game, though, because all the people that are tilted from the first game, they'll let them run one for just the second game. And there's a bit of a break between the second and third, right? They'll find it.
Yeah. Well, no. I think they all line up. There's a 12 o'clock, right? And
there's
then a 4 o'clock,
a 3:30, and then an 8 usually.
Yeah. So there's an hour and a half. It's like the same as the end of the. It's like the same as the end of a regular Sunday, where there's that hour. for them to give everyone some of their money back so that they can tilt enter that.
So we got Bears Lions at 12:30, Skins Cowboys at 4:30, and then Falcons Saints at 8:20. So actually,
that's gonna
you're gonna get like an hour in between the first game, and then you should get around an hour in between the second game.
3 showdowns.
But there's no way, dude. There's no way they don't run a mega showdown for Falcons Saints in the dome. No way they don't, man. That's good. Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Why are the Lions first?
Especially since those first 2 games are awful.
Yeah, I never make in all the years I played DFS. I don't think I've ever survived the Lions game. It's always something stupid. Always, it's like, oh man, this is gonna be great. Wait, why is Amir Abdullah playing quarterback? Like, what is going on?
Joey Harrington just threw another pick 6.
It's like,
well, dude, you know what it was for me? It would be one year I'm crushed because I played too much Megatron. And then the next year, it's like, all right, Megatron not having a good season. He's playing hurt. 3 touchdowns on Thanksgiving. Like, that's just the way it is. Yeah,
I mean, last year it was everyone. It was like Xavier Rhodes is so good. Marvin Jones is screwed. That was the day defenses don't matter was born, I believe.
And
then when Marvin Jones hung like 4 touchdowns on Xavier Rhodes or whatever that was.
Yep. By the way, shout outs to some of the viewers. We'll give them credit if they get this right. For the captain spot, Tony Rump says Chris Carson. FK, our boy FK Coolers as Baldwin and captain.
Go pick
I'm going to call him HPT, and we're going to assume we all know who I'm talking about.
Sharp dude.
Has Adams in the captain spot. Mark Smith with Mercedes Lewis, boys, in the captain spot.
Spicy. We'll get that for the second half showdown that they're going to start running by next year.
Yeah.
Play a little Mercedes Lewis. We'll have our halftime show.
He comes in refreshed after halftime.
Hey, we're gonna get out of here. Chris Carson, a fresh fumble to start off the game. -0.7 fantasy points.
All right.
So strong start.
Good one.
Here comes Rashad Penny. You know what? Now the guys that started Rashad Penny are gonna end up. No, I hope it's Mike Davis because I have quite a bit. Any last words, fellas?
Good luck, everyone. Have a great time at Showdown.
Yeah, enjoy. We'll see. Me and the Hot Magic will be with you tomorrow to talk position by position, and then obviously me and Lofty Sunday. Give us a like. We really do appreciate you watching. Click that like button, and we'll see you tomorrow.